Part 1. If God gave us free will, why is disobedience evil? I've been asking questions about God for more than 40 years. Here's one that still troubles me. If God gave us free will, why is choosing something different from what God wants automatically called evil? If I can only choose what God wants, am I really free? Perhaps genuine freedom means having the ability to say yes or no. But if so, doesn't freedom itself create the possibility of rebellion? And if God knew that freedom could produce rebellion, why would God create beings with that freedom in the first place? This is only the beginning of my questions. Look out for part 2. Thank you for watching. Part 2. Why would angels rebel? Now consider something even more difficult. Suppose God created incredibly powerful spiritual beings, angels with extraordinary intelligence and abilities, beings capable of helping create and maintain the universe. Then God gives humanity, his children, a special destiny, and expects these powerful beings to serve and assist us. Wouldn't some of them naturally ask, why them? What about us? If God knew they might feel excluded and rebel, why create the arrangement that way? And if their rebellion eventually contributed to humanity's suffering, was this really the best design? Perhaps freedom means that even God must allow the possibility of rebellion. But then another question arises. If God is infinitely wise, why would creation need so many attempts to get it right? Look out for part 3. Thank you for watching. Part 3. Adam, Jesus, and another Adam? Here's where my questions become even more challenging. I was taught that Adam was the first central human being, and that when Adam failed, humanity needed another Adam. Jesus became understood as a second Adam, and later, another central figure could be understood as a third Adam. But if one Adam fails, then another is needed, and another may follow. Doesn't that begin to look less like a perfect plan and more like a system that keeps needing repairs? If God knew Adam could fail, why make humanity's destiny depend upon one individual? Perhaps these figures aren't failed replacements at all. Perhaps they represent stages in humanity's spiritual development, different attempts to awaken us to what we can become. And that leads to an even bigger question. Is God running a finished plan, or is creation itself an unfolding process? That's where I'll go next. Parts 4, 5, and 6, continuing the questions. So, if creation is an unfolding process rather than a finished plan, that brings me to another very difficult question. Part 4, where does evil come from? If God created everything, where does evil come from? I was taught that evil is anything outside or contrary to God's will. But if God created beings with genuine freedom, those beings can choose things that God doesn't want. So is evil something God created? Or is evil what happens when something good, like freedom, intelligence, or power, is misused? And if God knew that freedom could lead to rebellion and suffering, why allow it? Perhaps evil isn't a separate substance at all. Perhaps it's a distortion of something that was originally good. But that leads me to an even deeper question. If self-centeredness can become the root of evil, what about God himself? Part 5. Is God himself self-centered? Think about this. If God existed alone before creation, then God was the only being. Everything else came from God. Everything ultimately depended upon God. So, in a sense, isn't God the original self? And if God created everything from himself and ultimately wants everything to return to him, how is that different from self-centeredness? Perhaps the answer is that God's self isn't like ours. Perhaps God's self is infinitely larger. Maybe divine love means that God's identity embraces everything that exists. Then perhaps the problem isn't having a self. Perhaps the problem is having a self that is too small. A self that says, only I matter. Maybe spiritual growth is actually the expansion of the self, the gradual discovery that other people, other beings, and ultimately all of creation are connected to us. But if that's true, then another mystery appears. Part 6. How can an infinite God have individuality? If God is infinite, how can God be an individual? I can be identified because I'm a particular person. A tree can be identified because it is a particular tree. Everything in creation can, in some way, be distinguished and defined. But if God is infinite, beyond time, space, and limitation, how can we define God as an individual? Perhaps God isn't one thing among other things. Perhaps God is the very ground from which all things exist. Perhaps the infinite expresses itself through countless finite individualities. The one becomes many, and the many remain connected to the one. If that's true, then perhaps individuality isn't the opposite of unity. Perhaps individuality is actually how unity expresses itself. And that brings us to an even deeper question. What was God before creation? And why create it all? That's where I'll continue in the next part of this journey. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And thank you for watching. Please don't forget to press like, and look out for part 7.